third annual Central Texas Math Summit. We're going to be recording today. You should have just gotten a notice for that. We're recording so that we can share with other people who could not be here can join us. But we are glad to have all of you and expect more people to be coming in, and wanted to especially thank the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, who is supporting this work. Throughout the day, we'll have a dashboard. You can see the link there, and we'll put the link in chat. It'll have a link to all the different resources that you'll need, all the other links, our Padlet, all of the information that you might want now and going into the future. So please refer to that dashboard throughout the day. As we start, you may have heard about this in our discussions. Sorry, wrong direction. But we wanted you to think and share about a pivotal math moment in your life. It could be positive, it could be negative, it could be just surprising. You can go to the QSR code right there on your screen, or you can go to the link that is in your chat box. Choose one of the three categories and click on the plus side, and it'll allow you to add your post into that sheet. You can add as many as you want. You may have a positive and a negative. You can put a heart next to others so that you can comment on theirs or like theirs. You might have something similar to what you've experienced. I know in our breakout, Valerie and I both had big sisters who we were constantly compared to about, she must be the one who's good in math. You might have a different story. Please put it in that sheet. And then if we have a moment, we'll also briefly share one or two of those. I'm going to wait just a minute while you have a chance to type. Okay, I'm sure some people are typing, but if anybody would like to share just one or two, or Lindsay or Timai, our co-hosts, if you would like to be able to read one out that you think is especially funny or interesting or exciting, now's the time to do it.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. This is Timai. Good morning, everyone. I see there's about 15 people that are actively typing on the Padlet, so we're eagerly waiting for those posts to come through. But I'm happy to share my personal one, which you'll see on the screen there. And unfortunately, it was under the column of not so positive. So I actually was subjected to that idea of the model minority. And so all my teachers all through school just made that assumption that I was naturally good at math. And so that meant that I never really got the support that I really needed. And somehow I found myself taking calculus as a senior, even though I was going to be a French and Spanish teacher, which really didn't make sense to me at the time. And so that's just a good example of the work that we're doing and why we really need to align those pathways with students' aspirations. Thank you.
Perfect. I love that one. Does anybody else have one they want to share, or Lindsay might want to call out for us as a former teacher?
Well, I was really excited to learn from Alicia that the reason that she's in this wonderful math role is kind of by accident, that she was supposed to be a science teacher and then taught one section of Algebra 1, and now she's leading math for an entire district in Leander, and that's really cool to know. And I'm glad that twist of fate happened so that we have you here in your leadership for so many students in Central Texas.
That's excellent. I love to hear that. Okay, well, let's keep going. And if you think of more moments during our conversations today, please feel free to share them, and we'll continue to come back to them and have a good laugh or a heartwarming story, or know somebody that we need to show our support for. So our agenda today, right now, we're going to have just a quick orientation to the Math Alignment Task Force work. Many of you have been engaged and involved in this since 2018 when we first started it. Some of you may be newer to the process. We want to go over just a very brief history. AJ, our new Director of Research, is going to ground us in the data, and then you're going to get to see yourselves in the data and start setting SMARTY goals for your organizations today, and comparing amongst each other within your institution of higher education or district, and then looking at the knowledge that we have to guide our work. After lunch, we'll be comparing those plans and actually putting them down as 30, 60, 90-day plans as we move forward, comparing them with leadership and getting their support, and then committing to next steps. So it's going to be a full day. We're glad to have you joining. Believe me that there are very few times, and this is one of them, when we will be talking at you, but most of the time is for you to dig deeply into the data and into your plans and what's worked and hasn't worked so that you can move things forward. Okay, we want to just remind you, you heard from Lindsay previously or saw in the chat, if you haven't yet, please do rename yourself. You can just right click on your name or click on participants and find your name and go to more. Put your organizational name, just an abbreviated version, in your name at the beginning or the end, so that we will be able to identify the right people for the breakout rooms. That'll really help us. So thank you for that. And also make sure that you do mute during the whole group discussions, just so that we can hear everyone. So on to the reorientation of the work. First, we want to make sure everybody understands who is involved. We have multiple colleges and universities from across this region and beyond the core Central Texas. For instance, Temple College. We're glad to have them all join us. We have school districts from across the region, large and small, urban, suburban, rural. The work is led by the Charles Dana Center and the E3 Alliance together, but I want to especially call out our supporters. This summit and the work around it is supported by the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, but we also could not do this without the foundation being laid by the Greater Texas Foundation, who's supporting E3's work around math pathways for many, many years. And I'd also like to call the Gates Foundation out, who will be here today, and they're looking at how to engage this much more deeply with our institutions of higher ed as we work through transformational processes. So thanks to all of those foundations for supporting this work. And we especially want to thank those who are pre-K through 12 and higher ed partners who participated throughout the last few years in our Pathways of Promise steering committees, who have had their districts, some of them take part in the steering committee, but also the work with NAEP and our partnerships around training on mathematics, and as well as culturally responsive pedagogy. So lots of opportunities there. We've had a lead implementation team around the Central Texas Math Alignment Task Force that have helped us with advising, with sustainable structures, with teaching and learning. Really, those have been led more than anyone else by Carolyn Reed at Austin Community College, Math Department Chair, and Derek McDaniel, who took on early on the support for the Math Alignment Task Force work. So thanks to Derek and to Carolyn. But I also truly, truly want to thank all of the Dana Center teams and the E3 Alliance teams who have helped put this together. First and foremost, Lindsay Fitzpatrick and Dr. Timai Dong, y'all have just been amazing. And I know from the many, many late night and early morning emails over the last few weeks that they've really been hard at it to make sure this is a great summit. So thank you. So again, it's Central Texas Math Alignment Task Force is a joint effort led by E3 Alliance and the Dana Center. We based it on a gathering that we had in April 2018, where Dr. A. Treisman really looked at us and he said, you know what we need is a charge. We need our college presidents, we need our superintendents to tell us to go do what we already know we need to do, but with their backing and leadership from the start, we'll be able to implement much faster and gain the momentum that we need to do. So we started in 2018 around aligning math courses, advising, assessment, and policy so that we could have math pathways from the pre-K-12 through secondary and post-secondary levels consistent with students' career aspirations, and to change our own and state policies and practices to create a more equitable platform for success. It was based on some data that E3 Alliance had been working on for many years in conjunction with the Greater Texas Foundation. We undertook the most deepest, most groundbreaking longitudinal research in the state of Texas that had ever been done on what are the patterns of mathematics course taking and how do they correspond to later outcomes. There were hundreds and hundreds of slides and findings from that work, but this is kind of the core platform that we like to call the scary math pipeline, that looked at based on the last math that students took in high school, whether that was Algebra 2 or 1 year beyond that, typically, and this is changing, you'll see pre-calculus, or 2 years beyond that, some sort of college aligned math. what was happening to students later on, what percent was graduating high school, enrolling in higher ed, persisting, and completing within 6 years. Any completion, that could be a 4-year degree, 2-year degree, industry certification. And what you'll see is that those students who ended on Algebra 2, which of course is technically optional for students, for almost all students under HB5 legislation, had less than a 1 in 5 chance. Less than a 1 in 5 chance of completing any higher ed credentials within 6 years. In fact, it took 2 more years of math beyond Algebra 2 for students to be on track to meet our state 60 by 30 goal. So this is a real eye opener for many, many people who had not seen this information before. There's lots of good news behind this though. So this is looking in Central Texas at what is the senior year math courses that are being completed over time. And you'll see this gray bar, let's start with, is students who took no math their 4th year of high school. That dropped drastically after the state implemented the 4x4 policy, where all students defaulted into 4 years of math, science, social studies, and English language arts. The good news is that even after the policy changed under 8B5, we've still seen that 4th year math, no math taking, continue to drop a little bit rather than rise, which is great because we've been banging the drum so hard steadily about students need math that 4th year. But that doesn't necessarily mean, as Timai said, that every student needs calculus their 4th year. In fact, there are a variety of other appropriate 4th year courses, and we're seeing that those options for college prep math and quantitative reasoning and statistics, all sorts of mathematics are growing, and those opportunities to have a math that's better aligned with career aspirations is a really, really positive thing. We also see that if you're looking at college readiness rates, specifically in mathematics, and you look at our region, which are the orange bars, compared to the entire state of Texas in the blue bars, and the change between 2016 and 19 for all groups, total, our African-American students, Hispanic students, white students, those who come from low-income households. Not only was Central Texas already have more students college ready in math, but we've continued to grow faster than the state has. So there's really good news as we look at that transition between high school and college. And then lastly, I wanted to share some new information that probably y'all have not seen yet, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation undertook a national survey that was oversampled in the state of Texas to try to get adult perceptions of math. And what they found is that's very encouraging is that 75% of those surveyed believe that math is very important in the real world, and 86 agree that math is critical to keep the US competitive globally. So as much as we hear about, and we are certainly very concerned about the culture of adults not valuing mathematics for students, we do see that the national perceptions and the state oversample is that the overwhelming majority of people now believe that math is important for students and in our position in the competitive world. So again, progress in the work. We launched this, got our initial charge and recommendations in 2018. We defined 3 different strands of work to improve teaching and learning, alignment of courses and the advising and counseling that we give to get into those courses, and policy. We've had 3 different math summits in 2019, 2020. We had hoped this one would be back in person. Next one will be for sure, but we're so glad to have you join us even remotely for this opportunity to review the data, share promising practices, and celebrate success. And this year, we'll be setting our plans around the renewed charge we have now from 8 college presidents, 13 superintendents that we just completed this summer that will help set the future, set the direction for the future going forward. Quickly, some of the progress that we've made in teaching and learning. The Dana Center has led excellent work around building a toolkit of assessments and tools for 5 different math courses, ranging from Algebra 1 to stats and quantitative reasoning, to help align the work that's happening, again, at the senior and post-secondary level. We've had many, many opportunities for professional development to take advantage of these assessments and tools working together to align across secondary and post-secondary. We've also had, as we talked about, the training in conjunction with our culturally responsive pedagogy and the National Alliance of Partnerships for Equity, and those have been great for those who participated. We do have a few more of those. I encourage you to stay engaged. Around alignment and advising, we looked at those programs of study in higher ed in our region that have the highest enrollment and worked very hard to align the math requirements from high schools to our colleges and universities. And then to set our district goals and plans around those and our institutions of higher ed goals and plans. And you'll hear a couple of really great examples of progress today. We're working on a regional advising guide for counselors and advisors to support that consistently. And we've just started a sustainability plan to start to take this work and really push it out so it's less dependent on E3 and on the Dana Center. A lot of exciting work going on around policy. We worked hard with the state to improve the TSI assessment, which used to be, as you recall, aligned almost entirely to algebraically intensive skills, and now is certainly far better, perhaps not everything that we would like, but far better and much more aligned to what we say are college readiness skills. That is a much broader set of math knowledge. We've been working hard to get the state to approve of multiple measures rather than a single point in time test, be able to use to demonstrate college readiness. One of the ways that the pandemic has actually helped us is that there was a temporary allowance of using multiple measures because students couldn't take the TSI, but now it looks like the state is going to make that a permanent change, and we continue to work with the state to do that. And based on all the amazing work that's happening and has happened in Central Texas, we've put together a math policy brief that's been submitted to interim charges for the state, and will be part of supported legislation in the coming session in 2023. So lots of great work there. Let me send it over to Lindsay to talk about some of the specific regional goals we're now working on.
Thank you so much, Susan. And for those of you who I have not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Lindsay Fitzpatrick, and I'm the cross-team lead for transition initiatives at the Dana Center. And I get to work in regions all over the country, but my favorite is Central Texas because it's my home, and just really appreciate the opportunity to work with all of you and E3. And this is just a really special and amazing and impressive body of work that's happening here that we learn from every day and try to share with the rest of the country. So thank you all. So as Susan mentioned, we have really solidified our goals in the last year for Central Texas math alignment work. We've certainly been measuring progress towards these and working towards them, and I know all of your districts and institutions have as well, but we spent time in the alignment work group that had about 30 of you that are on this call, really working to flesh out the language and really getting these goals clear and right. And they will be a strong foundation for us today as you go into your team time to set an individual district or institution goal that drives towards one or more of these over the course of the next year, so that each district and institution can really focus on a goal, but that we're all collectively working towards these regional goals, and we'll continue to see the progress that we have been seeing over the past few years, which is just really amazing. For pre-K-12, the overarching goal is to ensure that students get to that senior year of high school taking an advanced mathematics course that prepares them best for a successful transition to higher ed and their career. In order to do that, we need to work towards all of these sort of sub goals that you see here. So the first is increasing equitable representation of students and completing Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And that's not necessarily that 100% of students are ready and it makes sense for them to take Algebra 1, but really looking at that in terms of an equity lens, because we knew that certain student groups weren't getting the same access as our white and high income groups. So glad to see that that's shifting based on a lot of the work that you're doing. We're also looking to make sure that we're increasing students taking math all 4 years of high school, and that 4th year of math for seniors or 5th year perhaps they're completing a college aligned math, and that we're decreasing the 12th graders taking below grade level courses. And you saw in that rainbow chart that Susan showed that we are making consistent progress towards those goals. And that and also that we're paying special attention to the particular courses that students are taking, that the conversation is no longer after Algebra 2, should they take pre-cal or that other course, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, but it's going to, what does the student want to do with their life? What do they want to achieve? What is that career field? Where do they want to make a difference in the world? And what math is going to give them the skills and the expertise to best prepare them for success in that particular career field? And then also ensuring that all of these goals, we're looking at equitable enrollment and success by race, ethnicity, gender, and income, and that we're shifting our systemic practices to ensure that our Black, Latino, and students from low-income households are equitably accessing and experiencing success in those courses, just because we know that in our communities, those student groups have historically not gotten the access that they deserve. On the higher education goal, overarching goal is to ensure that students take math courses best aligned to success in their degree program and career expectations, which is very similar to the pre-K-12, but shifting to thinking about especially that first year of math course taking in higher education. So we want to increase the percentage of students completing a gateway math course in that first year of post-secondary. And that said, if students take a course for dual credit as a 12th grader, that would certainly contribute to achieving this goal. And then also that those gateway courses, again, match what students or match the program of study or major that students are choosing, and that the math is applicable to those majors and programs of study. And that there aren't arbitrary course requirements that don't have as much to do with the math that would prepare them best for their career field. So really focusing on that applicability. And then finally, again, examining these goals and measures for equity and looking at race, ethnicity, gender, and income for all of these as well. As Susan mentioned, we have a renewed charge from 13 superintendents and 8 college presidents from this summer, as well as 5 other leaders from higher education institutions. And as part of that charge, we've included the goals that you just saw so that all of our leaders are aware of the goals, are supporting those goals, and then also these recommendations that the alignment work group came up with over the course of the last year, where many of you in this room said these are our recommendations for the next phase of the Central Texas Math Alignment Task Force work. And the first two speaking to that sustainable structure that Susan mentioned, so making sure that, because this work is never ending, it just needs to be a part of our normative practice as districts and institutions, and there need to be structures and meetings and systems in place so that it's just, we're constantly having conversations from K-12 to higher ed and across the region to make sure that content, course sequences, pedagogy are aligned, as well as all of the policies and practices that make students have a seamless transition. And then third is you recommended that you needed a regional advising guide. So it was really clear to everyone across the region how to advise students into those advanced math courses in high school, whether it be a counselor, a student, a parent, a family member that's helping students make those choices. And then finally, we know an area of growth for us is consistent higher education data collection. And our hope is that the post-secondary data partnership will make great progress in streamlining that process so that we have consistent data across the region, as well as making that process easier for everyone involved. So that is all in our renewed charge, and we're grateful to have the support of so many leaders across the region. Team I.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And I'm going to follow Lindsay's lead and introduce myself as well. So I'm T.My Dong. I'm with E3 Alliance, the Director of Community Solutions. So great to see familiar faces and new faces as well. So wow, just hearing Susan and Lindsay share that introduction really just does bear incredible testimony to the work that's been happening in this region since the Central Texas Math Alignment Task Force was first conceived back in 2018. So a lot of great work has been achieved in the original charge. And I know that as we move forward with the new charge, that work will be paralleled, if not surpassed. But now we want to just take a moment and dedicate a moment to really thank our districts and higher ed partners on this call, because we know that without you, we cannot do this work. And in particular, we want to feature one institution and 2 districts. And so I invite you to glance over the screen here to just get an idea of what our speakers in the video that are being featured are going to share, but I would rather you hear it from them. So I'm going to ask Susan to click on the video, and we might have to adjust the sound, Susan, make sure that we can hear it well, but the video is about 6 minutes in duration. And as you watch the video and hear our speakers from Houston Tillotson, Lake Travis, and Manor, feel free to put any reactions and aspirations and inspirations in the chat box as you watch the video. Susan, do you want to unmute? Looks like our technology elves are having fun again.
Okay.
And I think if you just click on that video clip there, it should play automatically.
No, it's playing. Okay, T-Mai, I'm going to stop sharing. Do you want to share just the clip?
Oh, okay. Give me a second to pull that up then.
Sorry, mine is not doing the audio correctly, which worked fine in the test run, of course. We do hope that all of
Okay,
you are
I
able
will-
to show.
Okay, I'll share my screen. I've got the video pulled up now. Thank you everyone for being so patient. The suspense, right?
Hello everyone, this is Farzana Hussain, Associate Professor and Chair of Mathematics at Houston Tillotson University, Austin, Texas. I'd like to share how participation in Centex Math helped Houston Tillotson to improve experiences in math. HT shifted the math requirement for certain non-step measures to
For me, the volume is very low on the video playback.
It affects nearly half of our first-year students. We are also working to start a core requisite model for developmental math education to support students who need that support in college algebra as of fall 2022. And our faculty team is attending several training sessions offered by Centex Math, including the FOSI, Focus Online Collaborative Interactions. We are also able to collaborate with K-12 math teachers, which is helpful for our faculty people to adjust their teaching strategies for better teaching and preparing our freshman student for more advanced level math courses. HT will keep continuing to work with Centex Math in future also. Thank you.
Good morning. I've been asked to share some of the journey that Lake Travis ISD has been on around how we are communicating our math pathways alignment to our community, to our students, to our parents. This all started back in 2019 at the Math Summit, where we decided to make that realignment to help with people making choices around their students' math choices and math pathways. In 2020, we really wanted to focus on how do we communicate the different pathways to the community. Well, then COVID hit and we shut it all down in the spring of 2020. And then as we started planning for course selections in the next year, we were all remote learners. So we decided, let's come up with a way to do a virtual showcase so that we can share with our families in the community how math pathways can align with student choices. So we've created what you see in front of you. And let me go inside and you'll see we had for all the subjects, but in particular for math, we came up with the idea of how could we use video to help people better understand math pathways and where they might want to go. So you can see those right here under our math pathways videos. This video right here actually was, the intent was to help explain to the community which math pathways were available and why you students might want to make different choices for their pathways. And so we created this kind of general overall video to help explain that. But then we also wanted to explore really from the teacher's perspective what math selections look like. So you can see in this video, for example, we had the math department chair at the high school explain the different math pathways and what those look like. Then we went a little bit more granular with particular math course videos. And so if you see on here, we actually had the math teachers create videos for all the different math courses that students can choose from to help them make better decisions for that particular class, and of course, how that particular class might align to their chosen math pathway. So that's what we've been doing over the last year or so. And I think what we're finding out is in this new paradigm, this was such a popular resource for the community that we will continue to utilize.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Gongora, the Chief Academic Officer for Manor ISD. As a district, we have been engaging in conversation and action centered around increasing access and opportunity to all scholars in advanced coursework. One of the first things we did is evaluate our systems to identify any gatekeepers or barriers that prohibited all scholars to have that same access and opportunity. In addition to that, we have set a goal for our district to ensure that all 8th graders will take Pre-AP Algebra 1 with support structures in place, and we want to focus not just on enrollment, but on the academic success of those scholars. We've also engaged in a great partnership with the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity, or NAEP, and E3 Alliance. And through that partnership, we have gone through root cause analysis, carefully analyzing our data at a granular level that helped us to identify opportunity gaps at the district, campus, and grade level. Lastly, as part of our implementation plan, we created spaces to engage scholars in conversations about their perceptions as math scholars, as well as teachers and their teaching effectiveness as math teachers. We got a chance to put together panels or focus groups with scholars and then shared that information with our leadership. We are excited about the work that we are doing in Manor ISD, and we look forward to seeing all of our scholars have that access and opportunity in advanced coursework.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm not able to look in the chat, but I'm thinking there might be some fan mail in there. So I just want to pause and say thank you to Dr. Hussein and also Dr. Hirsch from Houston-Tillotson, to Carl McClendon and Jessica Barr from Lake Travis, and then also Lisa and Dr. Gongora from Manor. Thank you so much for your contributions. And this is likewise for all the districts and higher ed institutions on this call who are really contributing to making sure that we are aligning math pathways across that P16 pipeline. And so in terms of what we have ahead of us in the short term and over the long term, what you'll see here is just our goals for today. And Lindsay did a great job of explaining those Centex Math regional goals that were really inspired from last year's summit. So you will have some dedicated time to work in your districts and institutions to develop new SMARTY goals that are aligned with the regional goals. And then you'll also develop new plans at the 3, 6, 9, and 12 month periods. Now, in terms of the long picture and the broader picture ahead, Lindsay and I really thought about this, and we're so excited about our increased collaboration together just between E3 and the Dana Center. But we really want to make sure that we are being more active in how we support you to help actualize and realize those goals. So we really want to provide technical assistance to you and provide that differentiated support through coaching calls. And then also, as Lindsay said before, there's going to be continuing work around development of that advise and guide for the region. And then of course, the work of the advising group, and then the group that's working on the sustainable structures plan to really help us work and move forward in terms of this collective impact work. And I know that's how we're going to see collective impact at its best, by maintaining this momentum. And so now that we have oriented ourselves to the work, we're now going to move into the next stage of today's summit, which is grounding ourselves in the data. And so this particular section is going to be comprised of two pieces. We're so excited at E3 to introduce you to our new Director of Research, Dr. Andrea Jacks. And she actually is going to share a presentation with you in a little bit, and she's going to be pulling up her slides in a little bit. So Susan, if you want to pull down, that way Dr. Jackson pull up her slides. But as we're doing that, I'm going to speak to you about what to expect over the next few minutes. And so Dr. Jacks is going to present to you over 20 minutes. She's going to show the regional data for Central Texas in terms of middle school and high school math. And then very excited, she's going to share PDP data at the regional level as well, which is brand new. And we've all been very eagerly waiting for that. And then what's going to happen in the 30 minutes after that presentation is that you will have that time in your district and institution to look at your own data and really process that. So speaking of processing the data, instead of just looking at the data slides as passive participants, we're actually going to invite you to use a data protocol to help you interact with the data. And so at this point, Lindsay is putting a link into the chat box that is going to take you to your dashboard. And so all of you who are on district teams and institution teams, you have been given access to your Google folder. So you can click on that link to your district or institution. And when you open up that data subfolder, you'll see the protocol in there. And then also for our friends on this call that are not representing districts or institutions, Lindsay is going to put a link in the chat box that will allow you to create a copy of that data protocol sheet if you'd wish to join in that way as well. But I love this protocol. It's inspired by the data-driven dialogue, and it really helps folks move through the stages of making predictions and observations and inferences that will ultimately help us really determine what action is needed as a result of the data that we see. And so now that I see Dr. Jacks have her slide up, I'm going to stop talking and let her take over.
Good morning, everyone. As Timai said, I am Dr. Andrea Jacks, and I am the new Director of Research here at E3 Alliance. I also go by AJ, so when I'm being a little bit more casual in conversation, you'll see people calling me AJ. But usually when I'm presenting data, I like to put on my Dr. Jacks hat. So for the next 20 minutes, I will be Dr. Jacks. And I just want to give a shout out to Rodrigo Lopez, our amazing data analyst here at E3, who did a lot of the work on the ground, putting this data together and making some beautiful visualizations for you to look at. So what are we going to do in the next 20 minutes? First, we're going to do a regional data summary. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. And then we're going to discuss our regional data in breakout groups. And that's actually not going to be in 20 minutes. You get 30 minutes to do your regional data and breakout groups, and then you'll discuss your data in your breakout groups. So the regional data and your institution or your district data, that's a 30-minute process. But this presentation is 20 minutes. So just as a reminder, Susan showed you this slide at the opening of our summit, and math courses, as I'm sure you know, unlike some of our other courses, really do operate in a pathway or a pipeline. So it's really important to keep this in mind when we're talking about our goals as a region that go all the way from secondary to post-secondary, because this pipeline starts at the very beginning, even in elementary school, and continues to post-secondary education and careers. Really, when we are looking at disparities or inequities at each part of the pipeline or this pathway, it's important to keep in mind that those disparities are existing at all points in the pipeline and not just at this one point. So they're really building on each other as we go through. So keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. So just a reminder, we have some goals that were set by our Central Texas Math Alignment Task Force. So our first goal is what's really focusing on what's needed to move students into college and career aligned math courses in their senior year of high school. And there is an understanding that that progress towards that goal starts in middle and even elementary school. So keep that in mind. So what are we measuring in this presentation to look at this pre-K through 12 goal that Lindsay talked about a little bit? We are measuring the demographic distribution of students enrolled in Algebra 1 in 8th grade, students enrolled in college level math in high school, and students enrolled in math their senior year and the type of math course that they are taking. So when you get into your groups and you see your own data, you'll see that there is a lot more data in your packets, but that is really what we're looking at in this presentation for our pre-K through 12 secondary math measures. So again, we also have a goal related to post-secondary math taking. And as I said, this builds upon what folks are doing in pre-K through 12 math taking. And this is really focusing on the math pathway within our institutions of higher education to ensure that students take the math courses that they need to succeed within post-secondary education and beyond. So when we are looking at these math measures in this presentation, we're going to look at 2 data points that have come out of our post-secondary data partnership data. I think this is brand new data that maybe our institutions of higher education haven't even seen yet, but I was able to get it very quickly from the National Student Clearinghouse. I have had it for about a week and a half. So again, this is a very preliminary analysis, but we'll be able to look preliminarily at college readiness in mathematics, enrollment and completion across gateway courses, and we're going to disaggregate by race in particular. In your packets, you'll see a disaggregation by Pell eligibility, but I wanted to follow up on some of that data, so it's not in this large presentation. So before we look at our data, let's just take 2 minutes, and I want you to think about what you might see. And you can either jot this down in the data protocol that Timai talked about and that Lindsay linked to in the chat, or on your own, if you'd rather just reflect individually, you can do that as well. So some of the things you would want to think about are what you're assuming about the data, what you might see, what you predict or wonder. And then I think a really important thing to think about is what are the expectations and assumptions that you're bringing to the data based on your experience and your role. So let's just take 2 minutes to really think about that, and I'll be right back with you. All right, so hopefully you've got some thoughts and some reflections to think about. And I see someone has already posted some in the chat, so feel free to post your reflections in the chat if you would like. All right, so let's start with our 8th grade Algebra 1 outcomes. So just as a reminder, E3 gets most of its data from the University of Texas Education Research Center. So this is analysis that we have done independently. And for these slides, we're comparing performance on 5th grade STAR tests to 8th grade math course taking. We are using the completion definition set forth by TEA, which just means that the student completed the full sequence of the course. It doesn't say anything about passing or failing or the grade that the student received. And any students with missing demographic data or an invalid IDs are dropped from the analysis. So when we first started this work several years ago, we did a quintile analysis to look at students who were taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade by how they performed on the 5th grade STAR. So within each of these quintiles, we looked at racial disparities. And 5 years ago, we saw that there were pretty distinct racial disparities within the top quintiles of performance on 5th grade STAR. So we worked really hard with districts in response to this to create opt-out policies for those who are in the top quintiles of STAR performance. And we now see, as you can see on the chart, this is most recent data that we have. So they're 5th graders in 2017 who are now in 8th grade in 2020. And we can see that we have drastically reduced disparities within the top quintiles in terms of 8th grade Algebra 1 taking. So that is a real win for the region. So again, now we're looking at the top 2 quintiles over time, and you can really see when we look over time how these gaps have closed. There are still some equity gaps, and particularly around income, but we can see that we have made amazing progress as a region, and that is really important. And part of why that's important is that we know that 8th grade Algebra 1 completion is a leading indicator of college-aligned math taking in high school. Again, we're looking at this pathway. So if we look at the current disparities in college-aligned math course taking in high school and compare it to Algebra 1 course taking, we can predict that we will have some reduced disparities and some increased math taking, college-aligned math taking in high school once these students are completing their high school education. So now let's go to that part of the pipeline and look at high school math. Again, we have our data from the University of Texas Education Research Center. We're dropping students with missing demographic information or invalid IDs. And for our high school math taking, we're looking at a cohort model. So we are looking at students who are enrolled in their senior year, who are also enrolled in a Texas high school for at least 4 years. So we can really see how much math they are taking. So when we look at just the quantity of math, we really see another big win for our region. You can see that after the 4x4 policy took effect in 2011, we increased the number of students who were taking 4 or more years of math taking. In 2009, only 43% of high schoolers were taking 4 years of math, and that jumped up to 71% in 2011. So again, we saw HB5 take effect, and you would have predicted that we would have seen fewer students taking 4 years of math, but that's not actually what we see. As a region, we still have 76% of our students taking college or taking 4 or more years of math in 2020. So it's actually still continued to increase despite some policy changes. And again, this is the beautiful chart that Susan showed at the beginning of our summit, which really breaks down the types of courses that seniors are completing in Central Texas. So again, I want to point out this top bar. For me, it's a chartreuse greenish yellow. It may look a little bit different on your monitor. And you can see this clear trend over time of consistent and slightly increasing college-aligned math. We can see the bottom gray bar that is decreasing over time. That is no math in their senior year. But a really interesting trend is the stats bar, which you can see kind of in the middle of this chart. And you can see how that has increased over time. Regionally, we have made a big push to increase access to statistics courses because we know that statistics is often better aligned with preparation for a student's career aspirations than maybe calculus might be. So let's look not just over time, but also in comparison to the state. So you can really see, again, how well we are doing as a region. So first of all, I want to point out that for the 2019-2020 senior cohort, we see that more students are taking math. We have fewer students who are taking no math as compared to the state. And again, we have more students who are taking college-aligned math as compared to the state. And we have more students who are completing statistics as compared to the state. And so just a note on this chart, it is sorted in order, in descending order for the region. So keep that in mind when you look at your own institution's data. The categories may be in a different order depending on math taking in your district. But despite this progress, we still have work to do. There are still disparities that persist. So as you can see in the slide, there is still a very large equity gap in college-aligned math completion in our region. So for example, only 8% of Black males from low-income households are completing college-aligned math in high school. So as far as we can come, as we have come, there is always more we can do as a region to support students across the math pipeline. All right, so this is the big, I feel like there should be a drum roll. This is the big rollout of some data from our post-secondary data partnership. So again, I just want to thank our 5 participating Central Texas institutions. That's Austin Community College, Texas State University, Concordia University, Houston Tillotson University, and St. Ed's University for really making a big push to get this data in, and I think record time for the National Student Clearinghouse. And they were able to turn the data around pretty quickly so that our team could get some analysis ready files to look at. So again, this was just a huge push, and I really appreciate all the work that everyone did to get this done. So just a couple things to note. This data is a little bit different. It has different data definitions as compared to our secondary data. We can go into more detail in that when we're in our breakouts. But because of the data that we get and because it is from a different source, we can't match that to pre-K to 12 data. So this data is for all students who are enrolled in those institutions, not just those who come from Central Texas. One thing to note as well, that when we're looking at completion here is a little bit different. It means a passing grade and not just completion of the course or fulfilling the course requirements. And one thing to note that we did see a lot of unknown or blank data on demographics. I think that is totally expected. As we keep working with this data, we'll continue to improve over time. So just a little bit on this demographic data, because it is the first time we're working on it. I think it's important to take a look at that. We are seeing, in terms of our breakdown by race, 43% of the students in our regional look are Hispanic, 37% are white, 11% are Black, and 3% are Asian. 60% are female, so very, very highly represented in terms of female. And I should mention, this is a cohort model. So we are looking at students who are taking their first time attendee taking courses at an institution for the first time in either a given year, or for the most recent data, this is 2020, 2021. So this is our 2020, 2021 first time course taking cohort. 25% were identified as Pell eligible. We do have 53% who are listed as unknown. So I think that there is probably some data work we can do to improve that, to get a better idea of what's happening with students' household income. 19% were identified as first generation students. This is not a required field, so we do see some blank data there. And 86% were under age 21, which is expected because these are first time attendees. So our first slide here looks at disparities in college readiness over time, specifically in math. And this is using a college readiness definition that is determined by the institution. So it's a little bit different from the slide that Susan showed at the beginning. It's not just TSI scores, but other institutional metrics that determine whether a student is college ready. As you can see, the disparities that we identified in pre-K through 12 are persisting into post-secondary education. Over time, we see a pretty consistent 15 to 20 percentage point equity gap in the region by racial group. So another metric that we wanted to look at is gateway math course taking. There are 4 relevant categories that we can look at in terms of gateway math in this data. So the first group in that gray bar at the top is those that are not required to take the class, or we don't know. So we don't know whether they're required to take a gateway math course or not based on the data that we have. And so they may not be required because they've completed those requirements already, or they may not be required because their program of study doesn't require it. So this will be some future work that we need to look into to see how that really breaks down. The next group is the lightest color for each group. And those are those that are required, but they did not attempt, or we don't know whether they attempted gateway math in their first year. Again, unknown in this category is very, very small. But these are folks that they should be taking gateway math, but for whatever reason, they did not take it in their first year. And then the next group, so the next darkest, is those who are required and attempted their gateway math course in year 1, but they did not complete it for whatever reason. And then the final group are, this is what we want to see in terms of gateway math course taking. It's those that are required to take it, they attempted it, and they successfully completed it. So one really interesting trend that I wanted to pull out and share, when we are looking over time, we really see something happening during the pandemic in terms of gateway course completion that could be an indicator of some problems ahead. So in 2019, 2020, we saw this huge decrease in students who were completing gateway math courses overall, but also just exacerbated disparities in who is completing gateway math courses. So before, very few disparities in completion, and now we are seeing about a 15 percentage point equity gap for those who attempted and tried to complete gateway math in the 2019-2020 school year. And then that closed slightly to a 10 percentage point equity gap in 2020-2021, but we are still seeing these disparities that are increased over the previous period. So just some interesting things to think about as you look at your institution's data. So now it is your turn. I am going to send you off. Well, not me, Sarah will send you off to your institution and district teams, where you'll discuss the regional data first using the protocol that Timai shared at the beginning. You're going to talk about what you observed, and then you're going to look at your district and institutional data and look at what you observe. And then you're going to take some time to predict, observe, and contextualize with both in preparation for later on today. So my team will be jumping around to answer some questions about the data, but I will now turn it back so that we can go into our breakout rooms.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for engaging in that second team time opportunity. I do want to just say before we continue in the summit that don't feel afraid that you did not finish your SMARTY goal during that time. There will be more time to do that and finalize that after lunch, I promise. But for now, we are going to move forward into the next phase of the summit, which has to do with co-constructing the knowledge that will continue to guide our work. And so we have been oriented to the syntax map work. We've had an opportunity to analyze data, and then hopefully in your teams, you were able to develop a shared understanding and shared meaning around the data and what it tells you in terms of necessary action going forward. But now in terms of the knowledge, we're not just thinking about data, but we're also thinking about resources, those tangible materials that are also useful as we work together. And so we're going to spend some time actually looking at those resources. On the next slide, I am going to walk you through a Google folder that has all the materials and documents and resources that you will need to be able to continue this work. And so I believe that Lindsay just put the link there in the chat box. So I invite you to open that up and have that up on your browser. And what we're going to do is just walk you to all those resources like you see on the screen here, but I'm actually going to try to do my best to connect the dots so that you see how all those resources and files and links, oh my, all connect together to really help us advance this work. And so we're going to jump to the next slide and just dive right into this. So when you open it up, you'll see all these different folders there. And I think we even added a 7th folder where we're going to populate with Summit 2021 resources going forward. But I want to just orient you, walk you through what you're going to find in each of these subfolders. And so before we get to the meat and essence of the materials, I want to just point out some supporting documents. And so the first folder there is the dashboard and links for this summit. And so obviously going forward, you're going to want to keep going back to this folder and team folder. And so when you open up that, you'll see a slide. And when you click on that link, that just takes you to the dashboard. So all in one place. And then the second folder, the renewed charge, so that is the wonderful charge that has been reinitiated and approved by the 8 college presidents and the 13 superintendents. And so we're excited about that work. If you want to look at that charge in depth, you're welcome to look there and find that charge and read it in detail. And then the charge for us really is that why. It helps us orient ourselves to the why we're doing this work. And then when we think about the what, that's the regional goals that Lindsay briefly explained a little bit earlier. And when you open up that file, you'll see 2 documents in there, because as Lindsay and I were crafting the regional goals for post-secondary, we realized we cannot do that in isolation without thinking about what are those goals for secondary, because the 2 are really meant to be mutually supportive and mutually reinforcing. And so I want to look at those. And what we know is that when we're talking about alignment across that P16 pipeline, if we really want students to be successful in that first year Gateway Mathematics course, we have to make sure that we're doing what we can in K-12 to set them up for that success, inclusive of taking 4 years of math, which you've heard during this morning so far. And then before I go into the policy recommendations, I'm going to just turn your attention to teaching and learning. If you open up that document, that was a resource that Susan alluded to before, where she talked about the collaboration that happened between pre-K-12 and higher ed to develop these wonderful resources that actually affect instruction in the classroom. And so feel free to look at that and play around with the toolkit and the resource and the different tasks that are available that were designed to really help students learn optimally in the math classroom. And then we also added the POP state policy brief there as well, which actually was developed in conjunction with the Dana Center. And so we're happy to reveal that policy brief if you want to take a look at that and see what were the recommendations based on the success that we've seen in Central Texas around this Pathways of Promise and math alignment work. We felt were important to try to take to the state level and have them actually adopt. And now let's go back to the policy recommendations. This really is the meat of it. And so if the charge is the why and the regional goals are the what that we strive toward and aim for, the policy recommendations really provide us with the how. And so when you open up that document, you're actually going to see 4 files in there. And I'll bring your attention to the ones that are labeled Word versions, because those are the easiest ones to see in terms of scrolling through and looking at all the recommendations. And so just some historical context. In 2018, the Pathways of Promise Steering Committee developed these recommendations that they felt were necessary to be able to move the needle and remove those barriers in order to remove the inequities that we were seeing in the data in terms of students showing potential for math, not having that opportunity and access to accelerate in middle school, and then obviously matriculate into advanced classes in high school. And so because of the success that we saw with the steering committee using those recommendations and instituting them as practice or as policy, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to develop higher ed policy recommendations in similar fashion, so that in both realms, we were really activating that secondary and post-secondary space and really working together using that P16 approach. And so the Word version will give you a rundown of what those policy recommendations are. I'm going to pause and just make a clarification. So this is a little p, this is our local policy, right? Not the big P. And so you can look at that. In terms of the other 2 documents that are labeled collaborative version, you do not need to worry about that unless you are someone that actually wants to be responsible for updating those policy implementation maps. And so for pre-K-12, those are assigned to the Pathways of Promise leads that I interact with regularly throughout the year. So they have access to that. And then for higher ed, we now have higher ed lead implementation members that have access to that. Now, if you feel left out, you can definitely check with me and I'd be happy to give you access. We really wanted to make sure that there was one key individual that was responsible for updating those policy maps. And Lindsay and I will give you more information about that later. And so hopefully this gives you just a good summary and overview of everything that you can find in this one-stop shop place to access everything you need to continue this work. And I'm going to ask everybody, if you have not done so, would you kindly make this a bookmark? So please go ahead and bookmark this webpage if you haven't already done so. And that way you'll have it there to refer to and access easily. And so now that we've talked about the policy recommendations, this is a good segue into what we're going to do next. And so on the following slide, we are going to make sure that we take advantage of the collective knowledge and wealth of knowledge that is on this call between our districts and higher ed institutions. And so you're going to have an opportunity to learn from each other, because we know that the best resource can sometimes be each other. So what we're going to do now is we're going to invite you to participate in a breakout session, but this is going to be a choose your own breakout session. So before Sarah opens up the room, let me just give you a little information. So we were thinking about these policy recommendations for pre-K-12 and for higher ed, and really thinking which were the ones that were the greatest levers that could really help us move toward progress, toward goals. And so we picked these. And so on the pre-K-12 side, we're really looking at teacher effectiveness across elementary, middle, and high school, and then definitely looking at that 4 years of high school math. And then for higher ed, we're looking at advising, and then for teaching and learning, specifically the quality of teaching and learning as part of a continuous improvement cycle in that Gateway Mathematics course. So what's going to happen is you will have 4 options. When Sarah opens up the room, you'll have 4 breakout room options, and you'll be able to choose the one that you want to join. I will be facilitating the teacher effectiveness one. And then we have someone from the Dana Center who will be leading the high school math discussion. Lindsay will lead advising. And then we have someone from the Dana Center, Heather Ortiz from the Dana Center will be leading advising, and then Lindsay will lead the continuous improvement one. And so in that time, we're going to actually have an opportunity to share strategies and learn from each other, and really just have an open conversation dialogue and see how we can have that tap into that cross-district and cross-sector wealth of knowledge and really get something from it and learn that can help inform the work that we have to do the rest of the summit in terms of really fine-tuning that SMARTY goal. And so with that said, I'm going to ask Sarah to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms. Again, you'll see 4 options. I invite you to click on breakout room in the bottom toolbar, choose the one that you want to enter, and then hop into that room. And if for some reason you don't have that breakout room option as part of the Zoom upgrade, all you have to do is chat Sarah and she'll
be with the practitioners who know the why behind the what, to then move to action. How do we recommend changes? How do we come together on what are the right changes to local policies and practice to make? How do we put these into measurable, equitable, targeted goals, and then take action? All of you have been working on that today, and we greatly appreciate it. So we would like to ask a couple of school districts and a couple of institutions of higher education to share what they've done today and what they are most excited about it. You're at the very end of the meeting, so don't spend a lot of time, just some highlights, specifically looking at the next 30 days. What we'd love to hear from you is not the whole year's plan unless you have one specific thing out there that you want to share, but look at the next 30 days and tell us why you're excited and what others may want to learn about this. And we've picked 4, not to say everybody's doing wonderful, wonderful work, but we thought these 4 would be useful to highlight. So I'm going to ask in this order: Elgin, Houston-Tillotson, San Marcos, and Texas State University to share, focusing on the first 30 days work, their SMARTY goals, and what they intend to do this year. So let's bring down the slide so we can see these people who are going to be sharing with us. And we will start with Elgin. Can y'all share with us what you're excited about in this year's commitments?
Hey guys, my name's Katie Horn. I am a math and science IC at the high school. Ms. Hohensee is sharing our goal. So I think a theme that we've seen throughout the day is that there's never enough time, right? So we're still gathering our thoughts on what the next 30 days will be. Looking at the data, we saw that we really wanted to increase our number of students who were successfully completing a college-aligned math course. And in the next school year, at this point, we have a lot of kids who, if they were going to drop those courses, they've already dropped. And so we didn't want to make our goal, our measurable goal, something based off of how many students are going to complete those courses. But, it'd be something to look at in August. So what we really want to focus on is increasing our enrollment of students in those courses. And we want to increase that enrollment by 20%. We also, in the next year, we're going to be putting in a lot of systems in place to support students. Once they've been enrolled, that's great. We want to make sure that they're successful, right? So that way we can increase that overall goal of them completing the course. And so, we're in the middle of talking about what those supports are going to look like. But I think we have a slide that talks about what we're going to be doing in the next 30 days. So first we want to see what that number is, as far as what percentage of students in August were enrolled at Elgin High School in those college-aligned math courses to be able to determine, okay, what will 20% increase look like? So we need to gather some data. Based off that data, we may need to adjust the goal. And then our team that met today is going to meet again to finalize that goal and make sure that we have some systems in place to be able to support students once they're enrolled.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Very actionable, very measurable, but you're going to adjust the targets as you look down into the detail of your data, which is exactly what we want you to do. And again, let me emphasize what Timai shared earlier, is that we are going to be partners with you throughout this process. So you'll hear from us over the 3, 6, 9, and 12 months, and we'll be able to share at, we hope, next year's summit. We're still working on getting support and talking with partners about that, but we hope to be back again a year from now. So let me go ahead and move to Houston-Tillotson.
Hi everyone, this is Hoda Tabakoli. I'm an assistant professor of mathematics in HTU. And as of goal for math alignment, we are trying to, our focus would be to basically focusing more broadly all on the 3 regional goals that we have for our gateway courses, Math 13, 12, Math for Liberal Art, college algebra, and hopefully by the fall 2022, the new co-requisite model that we are trying to implement for our university, the process that we are looking for these 30 days, as Susan, you mentioned, we're trying to collaborate with the other faculty members, getting their inputs, what would be the best plan for our department, and basically looking at those regional goals and figuring out what type of information we need to collect from the faculty member, and collecting data throughout the semester to having some good amount of data to be presenting and comparing our result for from now until this coming year. And for the third goal, regional goal, we're thinking about for equity, that big shift that you guys mentioning, that we remove the prerequisite for the liberal art courses. We need to look at these data, see how successful that change it was compared to a couple of years ago, and what type of adjustment we might apply going forward, and also allowing the students at that point to choose their courses, those students that they are not a STEM required major to specifically go through to the Math 13, 14 college algebra path, allow them to choose themselves, are they going to go to the liberal art, or if they have that prerequisite, being able to go to the Math 13, 14. And the last thing that what capacity, probably all of our faculty members, the math center that we have, and our tutors, and asking from other advisors in our university. We looking forward to collecting all of those data and be able to have some tangible result towards the end for you guys.
Perfect. And I hope all of the other school districts and institutions or higher ed are thinking about what you're hearing from all of these exemplars, so you can think about what you might be able to share, what you might want to have offline conversations with any of these peers, so that you can learn from each other, because that's so critically important as we are implementing. Let me move on to San Marcos. San Marcos, we know, was the first district to move to pushing all students in middle school to Algebra 1. So we're looking forward to studying that over time, but we'd love to hear what you're planning on now for the coming year.
Unmute. All right, thank you. So San Marcos, am I still mute? Can y'all hear me?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. All right, so San Marcos will enroll all of our students in a higher level math by counseling our counselors, our teachers, our students and parents on the importance of the higher level math, and using the data to measure the progress by our looking at our student enrollment. So since we are already in Algebra for All in 8th grade, our goal is to ensure that all juniors and seniors, that they take Algebra either in 7th or 8th grade. We have a handful that do it in 7th grade, and that they will actually take a 5th and a 6-year math course. And so we wanted to make sure that all of our students take it in 8th grade, and that they're following a math pathway that consists of Math for All for every single year that they're enrolled in high school. And looking at our data, we were surprised to see we actually had quite a few Hispanics. I mean, they actually were our highest percentage of students that were taking 4 or more math classes. But what we didn't see was that they were taking a 4th math class, but it really wasn't a college aligned math class. So we really want to push that we get them to get into more of the college alignment. And so we looked at our 3 months. So we wanted to identify any additional courses that we would like to add or modify. Any resources that were going to be needed. We wanted to update our course catalog, notify our counselors that they must, to advise every student take a math every single year, update our course selection sheets. We were actually excited listening to Hutto and how they'd done some surveys. So we want to start implementing some of those surveys. What can we do? And then reaching out to them after they graduated and in college, what should we have done now that you're out in the real world? But we, again, in May, so at our 6-month goal, at the end of the year, we really want to go in and look at our course selection sheets and see how many kids really have a gap in that senior year, and go back in and recounsel and look at our course, see what we can do to get them into a math course that last year. So that's our plan. And in 12 months, we'll be back here creating a new one.
Thank you, Wendy. That was excellent. I loved hearing it. We have just a few more minutes, but I did want to ask you a question, because obviously this wouldn't be part of your 30-day plan, but a lot of our districts we've heard about concerned of, do they have just enough math teachers and the correctly trained math teachers to be able to push this, given that you're aggressively accelerating students into more math courses? Did that come up as a topic of concern?
It hasn't yet, because honestly, all of these courses, the stats, the AP courses, the AQR, we already offer those and have for years. And so we have teachers that are already teaching them. We did talk about wanting to add a college algebra class, and we do have teachers that are trained that can do that. So it's just, we did cancel one math class, the math models class this year, because we didn't have enough students enroll in it. So it's just a matter of re-looking and reevaluating. I think our teachers are used to teaching 2 different types of courses and having 2 preps. And so I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal for us to really look back at our course offerings. And if we need to shift one and, maybe get rid of one and add another, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but, we'll see.
Good. Continuous improvement at work, right? Okay, let's hear from Texas State. What are your plans, especially over the next 30 days tied to your goal?
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again for bringing us together.
And nice 12% on your background.
Hey,
baby.
I didn't think you could see the tattoo, so I thought I'd make it really big. Want to say thanks for bringing us together again. The conversation has been really productive, and several things came up that I know are going to be in the continuing charge, like that regional advising guide. So I appreciate the work of this group to keep us moving forward with that. So normally I'm one of those folks that's like, let's pick one thing and let's get it done. But what happened in our conversations today was we picked 2 things. And I think we can get them both done. So we're going to, do our best. We did pick, our first goal is really aligned with something that we started last year and are going to try to pick up momentum on, and that's our use of multiple measures in our placement for our math courses. But I'm going to skip that one and tell you about goal number 2, which came up as kind of a little fortuitous conversation as we were doing work around this. One of our folks who is new to our team, Sarah Boyson, mentioned that it was puzzling why some of our degree plans don't have math in the first year or first semester. And, that's such an obvious insight but we'd never thought about doing anything about it. And we are at the place where we're having conversations about student success writ large on our campus. And we have a newly constituted executive student success committee, and they're going to have working subcommittees. So we are going to, for our second goal, we are going to propose that a math student success committee be created, but specifically that its charge at first be to tackle the degree plans that do not list math in the first semester or first year. So it's not necessarily a data-driven goal, but we feel like we have all the pieces in place. And I feel like with the continuing work of this committee and the great conversations that we bring together with people that don't always that we're not able to make the time to get together, fortuitous opportunities like this came about. So we're excited about both of our goals. And I want to especially thank our math department for all the work they've done with multiple measures assessment and the work that they'll continue to do. But I'm excited that we've come up with 2 different goals that work in 2 different spheres.
That's great, and great to hear, and just exciting. And again, wanted to thank Elgin and San Marcos and Houston Tillotson and Texas State for letting us call them out today. But that doesn't mean that we've got lots and lots of partners doing great work. And so we'll be spending the year sharing from each other. As we get ready to close out, let me, and now I can't find my screen that I had. Where did it go? Okay, it was here mere moments ago. Just 1 minute. Okay. Sorry about this. Okay, try this one more time. Just have to find it. Okay, so as we go to the next steps, Team I, share with us where we go from here.
Thank you, Susan. Be happy to share the next steps. Other than counting down the 365 days until the next Math Summit when we can come together in person, we do have other things to look forward to in the next year. And so, yes, these are opportunities for us to check in on each other's progress, but I would say also and more so for us to come together and really lift each other up in this work. I love what Cameron just said, that how it is within these conversations that we really are able to share and learn and support each other. And so one of those opportunities is through our Pathways of Promise Steering Committee meetings. Those are held bi-monthly. So we have 6 per academic year. The next one is going to be held December 3rd. So if you would like to join that meeting, please just send me an email and I'd be happy to forward the invite to you. It is open to all pre-K-12 and higher ed staff. Anyone that is passionate about math alignment, please do join us. And then that's at the regional level. In terms of the individualized and differentiated support that Lindsay and I are really excited about, and Lindsay might kill me for saying this, but we really have become the Lindsay and Team I show in the last week in terms of supporting each other so that we can present to you a very integrated front so that all these different moving pieces make sense and we can help you connect the dots. But we really want to be able to provide that technical assistance in the form of coaching calls so that we can deliver resources and help you actualize those goals and realize those plans that you've shared with us today. And then in terms of the Central Texas Math Charge, the new renewed charge, you'll see there that we have those committees, or excuse me, working groups that are coming together to develop that regional advising guide. And then we also have a group that's developing and designing a plan for how we can create these sustainable structures. And so the idea is that we know that this work is intense, it's time intensive, but we know it's ongoing if we want to make sure that we're working towards improving and delivering equitable outcomes for all students. So regardless of what E3 or what Dana Center does, this work transcends that, and it really is the work that you are doing that is so critical. So as I turn it back to Susan to share, dare I say, the last slide, I want to ask all those folks who are serving on the advising work group and the sustainable structures work group to either raise your hand or raise your Zoom hand so we can acknowledge you. Thank you so much for your service. And Lindsay and I will definitely be in touch by email to provide additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. So before I go on to the last part, please go to bit.ly CTX MAT 2021 feedback. It'll take you just a few minutes for a very short survey, but we really, really need to know and hear from you about what we can do to make this better, especially as we plan for the coming year and for the We Hope Summit next year. So please go to bit.ly and give us some feedback there. And then while we're saying thank yous, I'd like everybody also to come off mute just for a minute and help me thank the Lindsay Team I show. There have been a lot of people at the Dana Center and a lot of people at E3 that have been working hard on this, but Lindsay and Team I have really just been amazing in pulling all the pieces together. So thank you. Everybody come off and just do a quick hip hip.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's wonderful to hear you all. Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye those who have to go. Orientation to the math work we did for you today. If there's anything else that you need to check up on, get a little past history, please just let us know. Thank you for AJ for helping us get the grounding for our data, and our entire research team who's been working really hard on the PDP side and the ERC side to bring that data forward for your institutions as well as the region. We got to co-construct our knowledge to guide the work and understand all the amazing assets and resources that we have so that we can move forward together. We could not do it without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to let you off a little bit early on a Friday afternoon. We appreciate having you. Go Math.